Welcome to the last episode of Expat Experts Season 1. Today's guest is a true world traveler who has visited over 130 countries, Kerry Damiano. On top of that, she created a web series to encourage solo travel, especially for women, and inspires others to shop local and try to live their life the best they can. Kerry once lived in England, but her passion for travel continued until becoming Mrs. World Traveler.
This is Expat Experts, the podcast that dives into the fascinating lives of those who've lived and worked across borders, exploring the challenges, experiences, and insights they've gained along the way.
But before we start with the episode, I want to remind to all listeners that the best way to stay tuned with the latest episodes is by hitting subscribe here on YouTube and in your favorite audio platform. For extra information about the podcast, check the website expatexpertspodcast.com or check the link in the description.
The Expat, Kerry Damiano.
Welcome to the first part of this episode today. First of all, thanks a lot, Kerry, for being here with me. It's a pleasure to be able to interview you.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. You lived in multiple countries, some places longer than others, but you visited more than 130 countries, so that's an impressive number, I must say.
Yes.
And
Fortunately, not all at once. You know, it was over 40 plus years of travel, but yes,
Of course.
I love to go and see something new.
Makes sense. I mean, but a lot of people doesn't even arrive to the 100, which is already a big number, impressive number. 130, it's even more impressive. I would like to start this first part a little bit asking for your background. Where are you from, and where did you grow up, for example?
Sure. Well, I grew up in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, which is about 100 miles south of the Canadian border. So quite far north, quite cold country. And now I have settled in Phoenix, Arizona, which is almost just straight down the U.S. To the south. We actually border Mexico. So I went sort of from one extreme to the other of cold weather, high country, to the desert and very hot. But I love it here, and it's a great base to take off and just go anywhere.
Nice. When did all your travels start? Like, how does this happen that you start saying, or where was the spark that started motivating you to travel around?
I would say it's my mom. She was kind of ahead of her time, and even her mother, which was a couple generations back in the 1940s. She would just load up her kids in the car and take off. And so my mom grew up watching her mom be independent. And so I watched my mom be that too. And so it wasn't weird to me to just take off and go somewhere new. And so, I grew up with that sense. And then when I took my first overseas trip, which was a college graduation present, that was in 1984, then I was hooked on seeing new cultures, experiencing sort of history come alive. And that really is what sparked my interest of wanting to do that, as absolute much as I could afford and as much in terms of time that I could do.
Nice. So you started relatively early. I mean, I suppose before that first overseas trip, you did also traveling around states, which is, it's something that for us Europeans and it's a little bit like we don't have this concept, no? But also like changing from one state to the other. You were just saying like where you grow up, it's absolutely different from where you're living right now, no? So I suppose that you already had some experience, like learning ways of doing different.
And part of it was because there was a reason to do it. It wasn't just trips, though there were some of those, but we were on the swim team, the track team, the volleyball team, some of those things. And so you have all of these different competitions that you have to go to, especially the swim team, because that wasn't involved with school. So again, my mom just, put us in the car. My dad was busy working, and so he didn't come with us. And we went all over the Northwest. And I got to see places that I would never really have had a reason to go to had there not been a swim meet or, we went for a purpose.
Hmm.
And that's a good way to start traveling, because then you're not trying to figure it out on your own. You're going for a reason.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I also traveled sometimes because of a sport, and I actually like it. It's another way of, I mean, there is the responsibility behind, and you don't do it because yes or yes, no. But
Yes.
um,
Yes.
what was the first country that you didn't like travel to, but you decided to stay for some time? Was it
Well,
England
that would be
or
England.
okay?
Yes. So back when I was in college when I had just graduated when I took the first trip and just fell in love with travel. So I figured out a way to go back. So I went to graduate school in London at the American
Okay.
College of Fashion, which is now defunct, but it gave me the opportunity to go. And so I was there for over a year and again had a purpose in it.
Mm,
But interestingly, Mark, there was no internet, there was no email. It was all done by letters. I wrote letters home to communicate
mm.
with my parents, and it took a week for the mail to get there. So my mom would write me a letter and it'd take a week. So our letters would cross in the air like this. Um, and so that was how I communicated with my family while I lived there. So it's a very different experience, I think, than what you could do now, where you could just, pull up your family on your computer and talk to them in real time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think communications have changed so much. Like it's just a, I mean, it's a luxury on younger generations and also like myself. I think I barely. I mean, I didn't have phone when I was a kid, but I think it was pretty fast that it started appearing all the smartphones and whatever, and how easy we adapted to it. I don't remember much of writing letters or like I think I have to remember.
Did you ever write letters?
Probably more postcards probably than letters itself, but I think
Yes.
well actually my girlfriend is still writing postcards, so it's just something that
Oh,
people
I love
still are
that.
into, so that's cool.
Yes.
um Although with the same thing you went to England, which language at least wasn't a problem. Do you
Exactly.
remember what was the biggest challenge that you had when you arrived to England at that point of time?
Well, wouldn't say it was just in terms of arriving, because again, I had going to school. So there was just the getting myself ready to go to school. But I think probably the biggest challenge was being so far from home. And even though I had already graduated from college and I had gone away for school, there was still that safety net of your
Hmm.
family. You're in the same country, you
Yeah.
can communicate easily. And so being that far away and completely on my own, okay, I was 22 and a half years old, but still, it was a long ways away from home and difficult to get home if something happened, if there was an
Hmm.
emergency. So I think that was probably my biggest challenge, was truly cutting the umbilical cord of being so far away. And I truly had to figure everything out on my own. And I call that adulting. When you just go through that process of there's no help, you just have to be an adult.
Absolutely.
It's a good growing up experience, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, nowadays, I think people just start doing that by leaving the parents' place and then going to whatever. But it's really true that as soon as you have the family close by and whatever, you always have this safety net. And even nowadays, when you live further away and in another country, then it changes the perspective for sure. It's another whole
It
story.
does.
Um,
It
on the
does.
other hand, right now it's pretty common. I don't know if back then it was common in university for you to, or you were one of the few foreigner students in university back then, because now Erasmus programs, internships, everything, everyone is from everywhere, you know? So you meet people
Right.
from around the world.
Right.
But how was for you in England in that time?
There were people from countries I didn't know were countries.
Okay.
Talk about getting a little wake up call in terms of, I felt like my education was good, but it wasn't the same. And you know this from living in Europe. European education is different from an American education. And so when I met people from places I'd never heard of, it was like, I have a lot to learn. And so that was really one of the things I enjoyed so much, was just making friends from all over the place. And while I'm not in touch with any of them anymore, that was very important for that time in my life.
Nice. Did you take the advantage of being in Europe to travel around also at that point of time, or you were too busy with university?
A little. I traveled a lot around England, a little bit. I was a poor student, so that somewhat limits.
Yes.
But I did travel what I could, and then my mom did come over for a visit, and we did Russia, Poland. This kind of nice big loop. It was East Germany at the time. Do you remember East Germany?
Not actively,
Were
no.
you alive when there was an East Germany?
No.
Okay, well, that was a truly fascinating experience, to go to Berlin, where it was cut right down the middle, and there was the west side and the east side, and going through Checkpoint Charlie and having all the soldiers around, and the barbed wire, and just that feeling of one side was full of music and light and joy of living, and the other side was sort of depressed and kept down. And so, I mean, this is one of the reasons I love to travel. I'm sure one of the reasons you do too, is that you just experience things that you could never imagine, and you learn things. Okay, we learned about it in the books, but it's not the same as being there and experiencing and seeing it with your own eyes.
Absolutely. Like, I think it's very much about connecting a little bit also while traveling. I think we will talk a little bit more on the second part, because a lot of what you do, it's also getting in touch with local shops and things, at least what I saw in your social medias and YouTube channel and everything. So I will go a little bit deeper into that part. But do you treat it the same when you are living in a place? Do you feel the same way traveling temporarily than when you live there? Because I suppose it's easier when you stay for longer time to do these connections. No, like.
Well, you're setting down roots, even if they're somewhat temporary roots, when you are, quote, living somewhere. When you are traveling, you're like a rock rolling down a hill. You just keep moving. And so you never have any chance to set any roots. So there's quite a bit of difference, I think, from that perspective. And you develop routines. When you're living somewhere, what are your routines? Well, I go to the grocery store on Tuesdays, or, whatever it is that your routines are. When you're traveling, there really isn't a routine, because every place you go is different. And so you're just trying to, live in the moment. And also, I'm sure you know this as well, that when you're living somewhere, you can almost take a breath. You can slow down, and you're not on this fast pace, see everything, 400 miles an hour. When you're living there, you can just go, okay, if I don't see something new today, that's all right. I still experienced something. I still met people, talked to people, made friends, had cultural experiences. When you're traveling, it's different. You're on this mission to check things off of your list.
Yeah. I suppose also the cultural immersion that you can achieve while setting on a place for a little bit longer, it's much bigger. What's your tip or advice for anyone who is traveling around to meet local people, to know their culture, to get in contact with them? How do you do it?
Well, that is a good question. And it's, I would say, other than in terms of my show, and I know we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but that is how I meet people. I like the shopping experience when you go in and you're asking questions and you're learning it, and then they want to give you some advice. Go here and go there, and so you end up building sort of a little relationship, for lack of a better word. It's not a deep relationship, but you start making friendships along the way, and that's what I do when I travel. It's to the nth degree when you're living somewhere that then let's meet for a coffee or something, because there's time to do that. It's truly about the luxury of time. Don't you think you lived in a number of places that when you have that luxury of time, you just approach your whole life differently.
Yeah. What happened next in your life? Like, you were traveling with your mom at that point, you finish your studies in England, you go back home, or
Yes. Moved back to the States and tried to become a productive member of society. So got a job, but I was very fortunate that the job that I had allowed me, the schedule was such. We worked 4 10s, which means I had 3-day weekends all the time. And I could combine it with, paid vacation days, and I could get quite a nice chunk of time each year to travel. And so that's where I spent a lot of my time, just going to those 130 plus countries, because I had the time and sort of the resources to do it. And I traveled with my mom probably for about 10 years. And then, I just got to that stage in my life where I wanted to do my own thing. I wanted to go where I wanted to go and do what I wanted to do, which is hard to do when you're with someone else. This. You go with someone, you go, where do you want to go? I don't know. Where do you want to go? And you have this back and forth. But if you're by yourself, this is one of the things I love about it, is that when I'm excited and enthusiastic and energetic, I go out and do things. When I'm tired, I rest. And I don't have to worry about disappointing someone else or having to split up and go do different things because we don't want to do the same thing.
So you're a big advocate of solo traveling, let's say, like this. I suppose you need to be a kind of person who also knows how to be alone and be okay with yourself.
True. It's true. And not everybody is okay with that. But, for those who say, I'd like to travel by myself, but I'm not sure I'm going to like it, my advice always is to start really small. And so small, like go out to eat alone. Like go to a fancy restaurant by yourself when you are surrounded by couples, and see how that feels. See if you like it. Go to a movie by yourself, or, just start doing some things by yourself and just see, am I subconscious? Do I like it? Okay, this was just fine. I had no problems. Then bump it up a little bit. Go on a little weekend trip by yourself. See how you like that. Don't go to Europe for a month by yourself first time. Build up to it slowly and see if it's for you.
I think you also give a lot of advice to women who want to solo travel. Like, I think one of the questions that pops up, of course, it's security as a woman. Normally, I suppose, or it's the first thing that crosses my mind. Unfortunately, we live in a world where things are not as equal as they should be. And some places it's hard. It's harder than others. What do you say to any woman that wants to travel alone and travel solo?
Well, most places you go in Europe are perfectly safe, and it's just fine. And enough people speak English, and it's just fine. It's a little bit like going somewhere in the United States, meaning most places are going to be okay. There are some places that maybe it's not that great for a woman to be traveling by herself. And when that is the case, then I say, if you possibly can, hire a private guide or go with a group tour. There's different experiences in both of those things. They have their advantages and of course their disadvantages. For me, I'm far enough along in my travel career that I like to hire private guides. In fact, I have a trip coming up in just 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks. That is Cambodia, Sumatra, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Vietnam. And those are places that it's, you know, you can't read the signs. So it's very hard to do it on your own. So I've hired private guides in all of those places. For one, my safety, but two, my time is so limited. I mean, it's fast. Some places I'm there one day. I've got to see as much as I can in a very short period of time. And I don't want to spend half my time lost or trying to ask people who don't speak English where to go and what to do. So it makes sense for me to hire private guides to do that. But it also makes me feel very safe. And so if you can possibly afford it, that's a great way to go. If not, group tours are typically quite reasonable. And then you have people around you and you have that sense of somebody's watching out for me.
Makes a lot of sense, yes. Recently, you're living, like you're staying sometime in the places where you travel. You switch a little bit the mode of like, also, I suppose, you don't have the same amount of work that you had back in the days where, I mean, at least you had the 3 days weekends. Hopefully someday that arrives everywhere.
It's really nice.
Is it because of time now? You have more free time to take also, and then
Well,
travel slowly?
I do Ms. World Traveler full time. So it's, I didn't think it was going to be full time, but it's so much work that it is. So when I go to places and I stay a month, I'm working the whole time. So I just, like you that work remotely, I take my work with me. So, oh darn, I have to go to Paris and spend a month and call it work.
What a bad news. Well, depends on your wallet, especially Paris depends on how it's your budget, because it's an expensive city.
Somebody's going to ask you, like, how do I get a job like that?
Multiple times. And I think since COVID, since the pandemic, things are getting a little bit more and more into that direction. It's happening
I agree.
more.
I agree.
It was a very reserved thing. Yeah. I don't know. A lot of companies.
They're wanting more flexibility in their work and working from home or working some days from home. I have a niece who she works, I think, 2 days in the office and 3 days at home. So that gives her a lot more flexibility.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think something that it was reserved for the IT environment and everything, it's opening up for companies of all sectors and everything. Of course, if you don't need to be present in front of a machine or in a restaurant, or that's a different story, no?
Right.
Like being a chef remote, it's complex for the moment.
Yes.
What is the places where you lived now? Recently, where are the places that you stayed for a longer time?
Yes. Well, this year I did Rome and I was there for a month.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that's technically called living there, but I call it that because I rented an apartment. I shopped at the grocery stores. I only ate out like twice the whole time that I was there. So and I'm not a great cook or anything, but I ate in. I tried to live as much like a local as possible. And obviously, because I was working, I wasn't hitting all the tourist places. And I've done all of that. I've been there several times. And so I didn't have the great need to see all of the touristy things. So I concentrated on my work, which again, it's more like that's what I would do if I were at home. So it felt like living there rather than being a tourist. Does that make sense?
Yes, definitely. Like, I think it's a easier way or it should be, it's less disconnected than just being there, living in your bubble of expats and, or of other foreigners without connecting with anything and eating out every day and living outside of makes sense.
Yes.
Still, I suppose it doesn't give you the time exactly to set connections, deep connections with anyone, or like get favorite places, or like, I don't know, suppose you meet people, but they go a little bit more faster than what you would consider a deep friendship or a good relationship, no?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But, I had, again, my route, and I knew people along my route, the grocery store where I went, and they knew I spoke English, so they would speak English back to me or help me. Do you need help with reading that label, or, so people then knew who I was after being there for a while. And so, that's kind of nice, right? They say it's nice when people know your name. They didn't necessarily know my name, but they knew that I was living
Who
in
you
the
were.
area
Yeah.
and that I was a foreigner, and they were very helpful to me. And then the year before, I did Rome. So 2024, I did Rome. 2023, I did Paris, and kind of the same thing. I was there a little bit longer, but just loved the experience of having the luxury of time and being able to see things I would never have seen had I just been, come in, see some things, and head on to the next thing. So again, because I was working for the show, trying to find interesting stores and all of the little outlying neighborhoods, I really felt like I got a good sense of going to all the different neighborhoods, and wouldn't have had a reason to had I not been there for 5 weeks and working.
Nice. I really love when I kind of have the option of discovering something that it's out of the touristic spots, like these kind of places where the locals go, and then suddenly
Yes.
you are the only foreigner there. The sensation of like, oh, I found something that it wasn't supposed to be for me, uh,
Right.
and that I think that takes time. It's a matter of integrating yourself. I think it also matters on which country you are. There are cultures that take more attention on these kind of details of like you going to the same grocery store every time. No, here in Greece, for example, if you speak some words of Greek and they see you doing the effort, they treat you in a complete different way, although they treat everyone perfectly. But when you do the effort of the language, it's another level. And when you go to the same fruit shop over years, they is what you say. They don't necessarily know your name, but you are that guy who has been here for 3 years going to buy the tomatoes to us. We have, like, and they know you, and that,
Right.
and they give you, I don't know, have you ever tried this? The other day I tried a vegetable that tastes like mustard. It's like in a spinach, and if you, as much as you chew it, it tastes more and more of mustard.
Oh,
Never
is it
tried
like a
before.
mustard leaf?
Yes,
Oh,
similar to mustard leaf, yeah,
interesting.
and which
Yeah.
I've never tried before, and it's just because these guys know me from some time, and they're like, oh, this is for free, try this. Okay, whatever. I don't even
Yeah.
know what it is, but in Greek, trying to speak, it's curious,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
So, do you feel like you have totally integrated now into the culture there?
No, I don't think 3 years are enough for being fully integrated into. The language is very complex. Uh, Greek, it's very complex. I think I have more facility because at the end, Mediterranean people tend to have similar ways of doing things. Let's say like this, but for being like fully doing Greek lifestyle on everything and everything, I think you need more time, and I'm probably setting much more. One of the things that I suffered a little bit here is getting deeper relationships with Greek people, which is something that foreigners tend to. Although I met Greeks from the very beginning due to sports and everything, it's difficult to make the deep connection in there because, of course,
Yes.
everyone has their circles. And since they were 5 years old with their friends from school or from university and whatever, and you are entering there like a mushroom in the middle of nowhere. But yeah.
Right.
Although I've integrated more here than in other places. It
Have
feels
you?
more like home.
And why do you think that is so?
Culturally wise, I think the culture between Barcelona and Athens and the way of doing things and taking things a little bit slower when you grab a coffee or when you, I don't know, paying less attention to work and more to life and this kind of stuff. Also sometimes like the chaos but organized thing, being chaotic but at the same time being extra organized with stuff fits pretty well into Athens, let's say like this. Yeah, it's a curious experience. Greece in general
Yes.
has a lot to offer.
I
I
love
want.
that. I've been there several times and love
Nice.
it. So
It's a cool country.
need to go back.
Um, you should. Like, there is a lot of the mainland these years that we've been here traveling that nobody knows about it, and everyone goes to the islands. And the mainland Greece, it's incredibly beautiful. Talking about beautiful places, I wanted to close this first part of the section, and I will ask some questions that probably they ask you thousands of times, but you visited 130 countries, which is a lot. Like, what are your favorite or your hidden gems in the terms of like, okay, this is a place that I was not expecting that it was that beautiful, and then suddenly surprised
Oh,
you?
I'm going to have to think about that, the hidden gem, for a moment. But I do get asked a lot about my favorite places, and I say there are favorites for different reasons. So,
Okay.
favorite for friendliness of the people, New Zealand and Australia.
Okay.
Favorite for shock value. You know, you just everything seemed to be shocking. The heat was shocking. The flies and the lack of sanitation was shocking. That would be Egypt. Favorite place for shopping would be Paris, even though, you know, prices are not great, but there's just so much and it's just so amazing. So, you know, I have a few favorites. More importantly, I would say I have places that I'm glad that I went, but I don't need to go back. And I think we probably all have those that, okay, once was great, but it was enough. For example, Easter Island. That was incredible, just absolutely amazing. But it's also a place that once you see it, it's not a place, it's not changing. So you don't need to go back and see it again.
Makes sense. What about for food? What is your favorite food you tried so far?
Yeah, you know what? I am not a foodie, not in the least.
Okay.
So I sort of eat to survive rather than, you know, live to eat like some
Okay.
people. So I typically don't put any time and effort into big cultural experiences for food. So I have, and I know we'll talk about this next half, my show, I purposely don't talk about food because there's so many people who do. And so I will leave that to the experts of, you know, people who have a great sense of taste and smell and can tell you all the nuances of all the special cultural, you know, flavors.
Makes sense. But I think you need to find your niche, and if you have it clear, that's good for you, I suppose.
Exactly.
Yeah, with that said, I would say like we could rather like jump to the second part of the episode already. I mean, we have been putting it here and there. Hey there, everyone. If you're loving this episode so far and you want to stay tuned with other expat experiences, make sure to hit the subscribe button and follow our podcast so you never miss an episode.
The Expat, Ms. World Traveller.
You have, I would say, like a website where you have more like a blog approach into your travels, but it's like a web series at the same time that you give insights for solo traveling. You have social media now about your travels also. I saw Instagram and LinkedIn, I think also. And you also have a YouTube channel where you have a show where you explain your travels, but you also try to explain, I don't know, I've seen a lot of like giving recommendations of local shops, where to go for like these kind of things. What is the whole, if you have to summarize, what is the show about?
Well, the mission of Ms. World Traveler is to inspire women to travel and then shop local. So we feature women artists, designers, entrepreneurs, and men too. Just our focus is women, with the idea being that if you know something about a place and you know been into their shop and met them and know their story, you will feel comfortable. That will inspire you to want to go there. So you mentioned the blog. I haven't worked on the blog for a while, so that probably isn't the most important thing that we're doing. It just, you know, it's a matter of time. You have to
Absolutely.
choose as to what are you going to spend your time doing. And so the YouTube series has really just taken over everything. So mostly that's what we work on. And we go into a city and I shop the whole city in 2 days. And in those 2 days, I storyboard it, I write a script, I lay everything out, and then we film on one day. My niece comes with me, my middle niece, and we film on one day and then we move on to the next place. So it's very fast paced, and I'm really trying to give information that people don't typically get. So, this, there are thousands of travel blogs and travel sites out there, and it's all about where to stay and where to go and where to eat. And those are good things to know. But since everybody's doing it, I wanted to do something different. So for Ms. World Traveler, we're going to be focused on style, design, fashion, art, antiques, history, culture, architecture, sort of the design and the style side of things. I think that's what sets us apart.
Interesting. Where does the name comes from? I know that you work in pageantry, and I suppose that Mrs. World Travel comes from that. But how did you came with the idea?
Yeah, it's an homage to the 40 plus years that I've spent in pageantry. I was obviously a title holder back in my young days, but I stayed in it. I judge all over the country. I'm a coach, so I'm an MC. I do a lot with pageantry. And so when I came up with the name Ms. World Traveler, I almost didn't know what it was going to be. I've had it for several years and just, set it aside. It will come to me how I'm supposed to use it. And just one day, it was like the scales were lifted off my eyes and I could sort of see it's supposed to be this YouTube series. It's supposed to be a, website and a, just travel information. And so I made up the banner and, have the little crown that I just have a picture. I don't wear it, when I'm out traveling, but it's just an homage to my pageant community and something that sets me apart a little bit different than what everybody else is doing. It's also an amazing marketing tool because I wear it when we film. And so I'm out there and people come up and say, what is this? Or they'll say, congratulations. And I just say, oh, thanks. I didn't win anything. But it's nice that people have come up. They want to take pictures, which means they're going to go home and Google it and maybe follow us once they've, seen us out doing our thing.
Yeah, so there is a marketing behind it also. Of course, it's a strategy to put yourself out there and show who you are. No, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Right.
Maybe coming back to the importance and the emphasis that you put on shopping local. How do you find the shops? It's because when we were saying, finding a generic shop in every city, it's relatively easy, no? And finding the big brands, it's relatively easy. But how do you connect with the real local shops?
Yes. Thank you for saying that, Mark, because I work really, really hard to find those little, like the hidden gems. You were asking about the hidden gems.
Yeah.
I do a lot of research before I come because my time is so limited. So I'm checking things out. And of course, there are some shops that get a lot of attention online. I check them out, but I don't tell them I'm coming. I don't arrange interviews ahead of time because I need to walk in. I need to see the store. I need to meet the person. I need to see what it looks like. And sometimes it's the right place and sometimes it's not. And as you said, we don't cover any big major brands because you can find them in any city. That doesn't inspire you to travel to that place. And by finding local people, then you're hearing local stories and seeing things being made. It's not made in China. Nothing wrong with that. But if you go to Barcelona, you don't want something made in China. You want something made in Barcelona. So that's really what we're after. And I think that tells the story of the place through its people, through their art, through their design, through their inspiration.
Absolutely. I'm a big defender of not buying products from big brands, and especially like for ethical reasons, but also for ecological reasons. And sometimes because this fast shopping industry of like getting things fast, it will last only some months. It's okay. Maybe you pay some more money for something produced locally, but if the quality is better, It's better that thing will
Yes,
last longer than buying something that it's
that's
three
right.
times cheaper produced in whatever
That's
in the
right.
world.
And you're supporting local people.
Yes,
You know,
exactly.
I often say this, you know, some of the places you go, as you know, their economies are struggling. And so I
Mm,
feel like when I come, I spend money in the hotel and on a guide or in a restaurant or for local products that are made there. So I contribute to their economy by coming and rather than foreign owned businesses, trying to do it to locally run places.
nice. So your research market basically is then trying to find local brands in the internet, or like do you contact
Well,
people?
I find them there first, and then I'm walking. I walk the whole city and just, again, going into shop after shop after shop, trying to look for just the most interesting, again, maybe the ones that don't get any play, you know,
Hmm,
or they're just a mom and pop shop. They don't have any internet presence, but that doesn't mean they're not a great place for you to know about. So hopefully people depend on me, you know, when they follow our journey to see these places that they wouldn't have found on their own.
cool. I think I've seen a lot of your videos like preparing for the interview, and I realized that there is not a single type of shop that you go for. It's a little bit generic. Like in one place you enter a ceramics shop, and then in the next one you would be
Uh-huh.
entering a shop that it's, I don't know, doing a lot of handcraft. I saw in the
Yes.
latest video at least, but I get the point. Like if you can get the experience of seeing how they are doing their thing, it's even better, no, I suppose. But
Yes. That's our favorite.
I understand it. Like I carve wood, and it's one of my passions. And when I find a wood shop somewhere, I'm always spending too much time in these places, and then it's also
Yeah, well, you're learning
inspiration.
something, getting inspiration.
Exactly,
So yes,
absolutely,
that's a great
absolutely.
idea.
From all the shops categories that you've covered, what is the one that interests you the most?
Now that's not a fair
I
question.
know.
You know, I would say I don't have a favorite. I do like the ones that are making things in front of
Mm,
us because, for one, I do have a little bit of a fascination. I wouldn't say I'm good with my hands, but I make a lot of things. Like I make all my own jewelry, I design my own clothes, I've made everything in my house. You know,
nice.
so I love design and color and, you know, fashion and that sort of thing. So I'm inspired by that. So I love to watch people create things and then I learn something from it. But I don't, you know, I don't try and copy anybody. So I'm very appreciative when people are willing to show us how they make
Mm,
things that they know I'm not going to try and steal it. I'm not stealing their idea. I'm trying to show the world their creativity and their talent. And again, that inspires people to want to go there.
nice. Um, Obviously the creativity side you have it, the traveling part you have it, no, like the whole um, mixture makes sense that it results in the show that you are doing. But
Yeah.
how did this idea come life? Like in which moment in your life you decided, oh, okay, I'm because you already traveled to a majority of these 130 places before you start doing the show. It's not that you start
Yeah.
traveling due to the show, no? It's more the other way
Yeah.
around, probably. What triggered the moment, or was the moment of decision of like, why I don't do this?
Well, as I said, it was sort of just that epitome moment
Mm,
where all of a sudden, oh, I need to. But it's also turning a hobby into work, which, you know, you have to think about that a little bit because travel was my getaway from
mm,
work. Now it is my work. So there's a little bit of difference there. There's also a lot of pressure. And I understand that it's pressure we put on ourselves for how fast we need to put together a show, but it's also a little bit about budget and time, and you know there are factors, the reason why we put such pressure on ourselves. But it's very different that when you're going and I'm searching for places I want to cover on the show. I'm not sightseeing and relaxing and enjoying. It's working. It's fun work, but it's work all of the same. But when you're asking about this moment, it was like it laid out in front of me and I could see what it was supposed to be. And truly, this is a summation of my whole life. You know, in other words, it's impossible to separate Ms. World Traveler from Kerry Damiano. It's the same because it's all of my experience and my passion. Again, the style, the design, all of those things. That's why it makes it easy for me to cover those things as opposed to what some of the other people are covering, the restaurants. I told you I'm not a foodie. So it doesn't make sense for me to cover restaurants when that's not my thing. This is my thing. And so, you know, hopefully people are going to see something different and, be inspired, kind of like I'm inspired when I go. So yeah, it's just a culmination of all of my life experiences put together into a job that I made up for myself.
Nice. You also like touch a point that I find very interesting, no? Because at the end, every project, this podcast as an example, it requires an amount of work behind that. It's not always seen on how much work do you put behind the scenes, no? But when is for you the transformation between something being a hobby or like a side hustle to being your full job of things? Is it due to monetization? Is it due to sponsors? Is it due to bringing a revenue constantly that allows you to go to all these travels, or what is the reason that you considered that click that to be your work and not your hobby?
Right. I haven't figured that out yet, Mark.
Okay.
We haven't started making money from this yet. And it's partly because we're still really working hard to grow our followership. And you have to be at a certain level before you can approach for sponsorships and partnerships and some of those kind of things. I hope that will come. If it doesn't, then that doesn't mean I'm going to work any less hard and be any less passionate about this. We'll see. Hopefully it will come. But we're working to get more exposure. So things like podcasts. We're now working with tourism websites to try and get them to partner with us to put our videos on their sites because they typically have a lot more followers than we do. So it's a growth process. Nobody starts out at the top, as you know, and hopefully your trajectory is a quick one, but sometimes it's more like that, right? You grow a little bit.
Very few people.
If there's a secret, you should tell people and make $1 million because everybody wants to know the secret.
Yes. Well, there is a lot of people selling courses for $1 million out there of the secret of being famous. The other thing is that they work, because if not, we will all be famous, no? That's a whole different story. Nah, I think it takes time. It takes hard work. And I kind of agree with the whole strategy. I also take this project, what it started like 3 years ago as a project. Now it is a side work, a second work, but it's work. It's production. It's I need to dedicate time to it, and therefore I put an effort as if it was a normal, regular work into it. No,
right.
I was just curious if it was for you the same, or it really worked so brilliantly fast. Hope for both of us, let's say like this. It's difficult.
It would be nice to be an overnight success, but there are very few of those.
Very few. Do you remember from the places that you've been recently traveling, any shop, any local shop that you said, okay, this blowed my mind. This is something that marked me.
Ooh. I wouldn't necessarily say that it blew my mind, but I never thought about it before. We covered a store in New Orleans about a lady who made umbrellas. And, you don't even think about somebody hand making an umbrella. You just, okay, that's an assembly line, mass production, kind of a thing. But she made these incredible, with lace and fringe, and she had an amazing vintage collection, and then she'd show them, this has this kind of a canopy, and just information I'd never thought about. And it was just fascinating to hear her, who'd spent her whole life learning and collecting, share her information with us. And then, of course, we got to share it online too. So that, I just felt much smarter as I walked out, and even more fascinated with next time I, put an umbrella up, I'm like, I know more about that now. It's not as pretty as the one she had, but to me, that was just kind of surprising and very interesting.
Nice. Do you keep contact with all these people? Like, do you keep connected with the persons from the shops?
There are some places I've actually gone back. In fact, in Athens, actually, the last time I was there was probably, I think it's been about 10 years. But I had covered a couple of stores there on a previous show that I did in the early 2000s. And two of the places were still in business, and the people who ran the shops were still there. And I came in and like, hello, and they remembered me. And so, I mean, it's not keeping in contact regularly, but you make a friend. And then when you come back, it's like seeing your old friends again. And there's something really quite fun about that.
Absolutely. I mean, if they remember you, then you leave an impression. That's also good. It's both sides, I suppose, and so that's important also.
Yeah, if it's a bad impression, we're in big trouble, right?
Well, then they don't welcome you to the place. It's the other way around if you left a bad impression. So, what keeps surprising you about new places? I mean, how new travels? Now you said that you're going to Cambodia and all of that. Have you been before in there, or
no?
It's a recurrent,
no.
So it's
I
new
have been
countries.
to Vietnam before, but not Hanoi. So Hanoi will be new for me. But no, all of those places are new. So I'm going to have to put a new number instead of over 130. I'm going to have to up that number a little bit. But yeah, I would say just what I learn. Travel for me is a continuing education. And so, you think after you've done it for a long time that you're not going to be surprised by anything new, but there's still something new to learn always. And even seasoned travelers, I need to add that to my list of things I check before I go. So there's always something new to learn.
So you are visiting new countries soon, but what countries are remaining that are in the top list?
Well, Greece. We haven't covered Greece yet, so we need to come there. So most of the countries that I cover on the show, I've already been to. So I have some idea of sort of, what we're going to run into, though it can be very different. For example, I covered Argentina on the show that I was doing 20 years ago. And at that time, the peso had just taken a big dive. And so the prices were just rock bottom. And so we went back this time and the peso has recovered. Now, the prices were still good in terms of American, in comparison to American prices, but not anything like it was when I was there 20 years ago. So even though you think things are always changing. So, just stay open-minded so that you can see the new and compare it with the old, but move on with the new.
What are the next steps then for you on this project? There is any surprises coming soon? Or
we actually have a kind of a change coming. We're going to try and do some more local things and really try and work on our local community to try and get them to know us. As I said, we're really trying to grow. And I think part of that can come if the local community knows who we are. So we're going to be doing more shops here. And so we're going to change, instead of Ms. World Traveler in Paris, Ms. World Traveler in Oslo, we're going to do Ms. World Traveler goes to a museum. Miss World Traveler goes shopping. So it's less about the location and more about the activity. And that is coming in 2025. You have heard it first. I just made a big announcement. So you heard it first.
Perfect. So an exclusive, it's coming.
It is an exclusive.
Yeah, probably when the episode is released, hopefully you're already doing it, because this will be released in 2025. So it's already happening, hopefully.
Okay, fantastic.
So with that said, I would say, Kerry, thank you so much for your time today. And of course, the last question, it's mandatory. Where can my listeners find you? Where are all your channels? Where is your website?
Well, we are on YouTube, Ms. World Traveler, Ms. World Traveler. And then we're also on Instagram, Kerry, 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 Ms. World Traveler. And we're also on Facebook at Ms. World Traveler. So hopefully your followers can find us any of those places.
Absolutely. As always, the link on of Kerry will be on the description of the episode, both in YouTube, Spotify, and all the audio platforms. So, and of course on social media, I will be keep posting about Kerry and the project itself. So stay tuned. And to all the audience, thanks for watching this new episode of Expat Experts. Until next time, keep exploring, stay curious, and take care. Hey there, everyone. This was the last episode of the first season of Expat Experts, and I just want to take some time to thank all the listeners who have been following Expat Experts until now. The podcast will continue. There will be a season 2, which I'm currently recording with other guests, more exciting experiences, and a little bit of a restructure of sections. As you might notice, also a different office, different space for recording. So I hope that you will stay tuned in these months that there will not be episodes. I'm hoping that around June of this year, 2025, there will be the first episode of season 2. I'm looking forward to hear your opinions and see if you like it also. Thank you so much again for listening to the podcast and for watching in YouTube. Subscribe if you like, as always. Also follow us in social media so you stay tuned when new episodes might be coming. Again, thank you so much, and we see each other soon.
You've been listening to Expat Experts, the podcast that takes you around the world through the stories of those who've lived it. Subscribe now to YouTube and your favorite podcast platform, and stay tuned for more inspiring interviews.